Hello and welcome to the Rogue Monkey Podcast, the show that shares insightful stories to motivate, inspire and support you following your dreams on your own journeys through work and life. We've had an awesome week putting together episodes for the coming months, and just to give you an insight, we've been having conversations with air race pilots, businesses that are working on the Mars mission, a deaf author from New York, and the head of wellbeing for one of the most innovative wellbeing solutions that we've come across. This week's guest is equally fascinating from the off, and we explore how a handwritten letter nearly 20 years ago has led to a charity project in Malawi that has changed the lives of thousands of people. Our guest is Chris Knott, insurance broker and the founder of Starfish Malawi, a charity that has a simple but powerful vision: a just world where every child is educated, healthy and cared for. A noble vision, and one we are really proud to support. How you get from that to creating a company called Car Insurance for Cyclists is an equally interesting story, and one that has allowed the charity in Malawi to grow and develop so much. Just before we get into our conversation, we would just ask if you can give us a quick subscribe on whatever platform you're joining us on today. And after the episode, please give us a quick rate and review, as it helps the show reach more people, which we really are passionate about. As always, if you want to know more about the podcast or the team, head over to our website www.theroguemonkey.org. Right, let's get into our conversation and episode 67 of the Rogue Monkey Podcast. Chris Knott, innovatively bringing insurance and cycling together to support a life-changing charity. Hello Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Well, thanks for agreeing to share some time with us. I know you've got a fascinating story to share with us today, but if you can give us a quick introduction as to who you are and I guess a little bit of your journey so far.
Yes, well, I was an insurance broker selling car insurance to lots of owners clubs, Alfa Romeo, Saab, Volvo, for about 25 years, a successful business, the one that was growing. And then I received a letter from a strange place called Malawi. I didn't really know where it was. And the letter came through the letterbox, handwritten. And it just sort of, I don't know why, but I decided to respond. It was asking me whether I'd go to Malawi and help them to build a school and a church. And because the person had written to me handwritten, I decided to reply, and I kind of said, well, thank you for your letter and I hope things go well and goodbye and God bless. And I thought that was the end of it. But a month or two later, I received a response, and an opportunity arose when I was able to go to Malawi back in 2003. And I went to Kenya because I was accompanying someone, went to Kenya, and then we went to Malawi just for about 5 days. And never did I think that it would have such an impact upon my life as it actually did. I saw all the poverty, but I saw great joy. I saw great happiness. And I kind of thought, when I get back to the UK, I can really help this situation. I didn't think quite it was going to mean what it actually did mean, but I thought I could help. So I came back to the UK, and having built up a lovely business, 20,000 clients and whatever, I thought to myself, I'll have a day off a month to do this. And believe it or not, what happened was my directors saw how much it had influenced me and how suddenly my life seemed to have a different focus, that within a few months of me coming back from Malawi, they actually offered to buy me out, which I wasn't going to sell. I had no intention, but they offered to buy me out. And therefore, I sold my business quite quickly. And since then, for the last 18 years, I've been a chief exec of a growing charity. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but a growing charity where I'm a volunteer, so I don't get paid. And out of that, very briefly, about 3 or 4 years ago, something like that, I was sitting on a park bench, and I saw these cyclists maneuvering between cars, and suddenly this thought came into my mind: car insurance for cyclists. Suddenly, there's just this like a Damascus Road experience where I suddenly thought, surely this cycling behaviour would influence and would improve driving a car. And I came up with this idea of car insurance for cyclists, and I thought, again, suddenly I could combine my insurance broking skills over many years with my new international development skills and somehow bring the two together and raise money, but at the same time come up with a legitimate program whereby people who cycle and drive could get a decent discount off their car insurance. So that's where car insurance was born, on a park bench, sitting down and just watching some cyclists weave between cars.
Well, that's a fantastic story, and really kind of excited to see where we go next in this conversation. But at what point did you go from the park bench idea to a real live operating organization and start to see, I guess, the fruits of your labor, if you like?
Okay, well, I was, even though I'd sold my business, it still operates under my name, Chris Knott Insurance. So it still operates under that name. And I went to my previous company that I'd set up, and I said, what do you think of this idea? Are you prepared to kind of support it and do all the quoting and all the admin? And if I just got what you might call an introducer's fee, so people who do go ahead or renew, I get a small amount of money, all of which goes to Malawi. So in a sense, I'd already established the medium whereby I could actually sell the car and do the quoting, because it was my old company. So that was the next stage.
So then I guess that's obviously the domestic side of things, if you like, what were happening in the UK. So let's talk a little bit about the other end of it, if you like, and what's happening on the ground down in Malawi.
Okay. Well, I said that I visited Malawi, and I was introduced by a pastor. In fact, this particular person had written 200 letters to 200 people, and I was off a database. Now, I didn't know that at the time. And it could well have been a scam. 2 people responded to the letters, and I was the only person who went. But I went and saw a genuine need. I went to a school called Kaputu School, which was a complete tip. And I decided that the first project I would do, thinking I was still going to be selling insurance and things like that, was rebuild a school. And after about 3 years, we rebuilt a school for 2,000 children with teachers' houses, toilets, staff room, everything else for 2,000 children. It has indeed become the best school now in the Salima district of Malawi, like the county of Kent or something. It's become the best school as a result of our investment, and that's kind of where it all started. It got going at that time, and then what tends to happen is that you go there and there are great needs. I mean, at the time when I went, Malawi was officially the world's poorest country. I mean, you think of poor countries, you probably wouldn't have named Malawi, but it was officially the poorest, and so the needs were great, as they still are today. But we then decided, as the needs arose, so as we were working in the educational sector initially, we thought I obviously needed to raise some money in order to build schools or do whatever, libraries, or send items by container. So I started to go to schools. In fact, tomorrow I'm doing an assembly in front of 500 children at a school called Waverley Abbey, and then doing lessons. So my whole day tomorrow will be spent in a school sharing my experiences of Malawi. But I found that there was a real sense when I started to contact my local school where my children went. They thought, yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to come on board. So there was a flow of interest around education and over the 18 years, we've had hundreds of teachers from the UK visit Malawi. Maybe 100 teachers from Malawi visit the UK through a British Council Connecting Classrooms grant. And we've really worked within the educational sector. We've sponsored hundreds of children, maybe 500 children through secondary school, because in Malawi, you have to pay for secondary school. Primary school education is free, but not compulsory. Secondary school education, you have to pay. So we've taken it and gradually built upon the educational sector. We've provided libraries, books, and as I say, we are linking at the moment currently 30 UK schools with 30 Malawi schools, so that they can relate to one another and discover the world in which we live. So it's quite a moving. You know, it's all these schools I've visited and all the relationships that I've developed. It's sort of gone from just me to kind of a whole group of volunteers who have accompanied me to Malawi and then seen what we're doing and then decided I'd like to be part of that. So it's grown from just, as I say, a one-man band to now maybe in the UK 20 or 30 committee members and, you know, hundreds of teachers and lots of other people involved.
So I guess you wouldn't have perhaps imagined to where it's got to now when you kind of maybe had that first idea. So what kind of things have you picked up on the way in terms of lessons, experiences that have kind of guided what you're doing now? Is there any particular moments that stand out to you as being key milestones or learning moments, if you like?
Yes. I think that what's so easy to do is just to raise money and then give it away. And I think it's the training element and involving people in their own destiny that we follow. So, for instance, if we built a school, which we've built many school blocks, what we will do is say to the community, because it's their children, it's not my children, it's their children, you've got to make the bricks. Bricks cost nothing to make. They're molded out of basically mud and water and everything else. They don't actually cost any money to make, but they take a lot of time. So we get the community to build the bricks. We want the community to value their children's education, and we feel as though that's a great way of doing it, so that rather than it become our school, you know, these rich people in the West school, it becomes their school because they've sweated. They know about the sweat on their brow and the hours that they put in. So I think that's perhaps one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is that if you just give things, then they're not valued in the same way. Okay, people will say thank you and everything else. And, you know, as we've developed, then to respond to need rather than, I think that's the other one. We built a clinic in our particular area, 13,000 patients, and you know, absolutely critical. And next year we plan to build a maternity wing, because children and babies are dying and mothers are dying in birth. So responding to the need, rather than just to think, oh, that's a lovely idea, it's nice for the press or something, or people will like that. Actually seeing what the community need, and of course it's endless as well. I know that it's kind of, it doesn't just stop, but it's building upon, as I say, relationships and community involvement. I think that's what I'd say.
I remember having a conversation. Sorry. I remember having a conversation with someone a few years ago about quite a philanthropic idea, and them telling me, "Oh, you're never going to change the world, And I feel like with these kind of projects, we're not going to change the world, but we're going to change somebody's world. And when you've got a network of, say, 2,000 children in a school, you change 2,000 people's lives and ultimately their families' lives for a positive thing. And I think too often, especially British people, we can be quite cynical over these sorts of things. And actually, if you reflect on it for what it is, I guess from a high level perspective, and say it's something that's positively influencing thousands of young people to have a better future, that's an incredible thing that you're doing. So I guess from the other end, because I'm thinking about it again here, you've got the projects that are going on over there. What's the kind of structure out there, if you like, in terms of the support, the connection, the relationship that you have, the interface between that country and your organization here?
Yes, I've got a lovely story to tell you about that connectivity maybe at the end. But the structure is that we've got a team out there. The person who wrote the letter to me no longer is part of that team out there. And we've got a really dedicated team. The person who runs it's Nigerian and his English wife, which is great. Obviously, COVID has changed. We had to have COVID in the conversation somewhere. It's changed a few things, but we have a Malawian staff who are obviously paid. It's their job, but they're very keen to do it. Whereas over in the UK, we only have effectively one person doing 2 days admin per week, and that's the only staffing we have in the UK. Everybody else, every single person is a volunteer. So the structures are that we have different people assigned to different programs. So we have a program for libraries. So there will be someone responsible for libraries. We do a program called Bible Explorer in schools. We provide for girls who have their period, we provide what we call gateway kits, girls access to education, GATE, and we provide them with washable kits, because otherwise, when they have their period, they fail to go to school. We've produced about more than 10,000 kits, which means that girls can stay in education. So we have different departments, our school's linking department, our secondary school sponsorship department. We've grown in country to probably a staffing of maybe 20 people.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Something that, because I'm thinking back to your park bench moment, and I think having that vision there of quite literally just what you were doing at that point to where it is now, knowing everything you know now and how it's grown and developed and it's the success that it is, what's the ambition going forward? So let's say in 2025 we have the same conversation again. Where would you like to see where you are?
It's a good question. I don't tend to anticipate. I mean, all I know is that I work wisely with what I'm given. So whatever I'm given, some supporter, and this is a true story, some supporter who I've worked with for a number of years, we were talking about a maternity wing, and I'm sorry if I well up a little bit here, because it's a beautiful moment, but her mother died recently, and she said she'd like to do something for Starfish, and we talked about a maternity wing, and she's offered us £50,000, because we know her, she trusts us, and that came completely out of the blue. It might have been for my 2025 ambitions, but it'll be for 2022 now. We will do that. So I kind of just progressively, because there's so much going on. I often say to people, if you gave me £100 million, I could probably easily find things to do with it, because, as I say, if you go to Malawi, you find that there's no where we work, there's no running water, so there's no electricity. If you just take out, and there's really just holes in the ground for toilets, if you just take those three things alone, and you see how it would affect your life, your own personal life without those three things, and you begin to think, well, what could I just to access those facilities, those services would be huge. And the Starfish story, that's the charity is called Starfish Malawi. The Starfish story is all about the starfish being washed up on the seashore, and you pick up one at a time and throw it back. And as you throw it back, help that one, save that one, done something for that one. And if you can just help the ones and twos, I think it's valuable. I mean, it's involving people. What I try and do is, rather than go out for money, when I at the school tomorrow, I will not mention money. I will mention it. What I want to really capture is people's attention, capture their mind, capture their heart when they're just young children, so that they're shaped to recognize the world in which we live. So I think it's just seeing how that goes on, and just being available to whatever may happen, whatever comes up in the future. This maternity wing was something that was in a report about 2 months ago, and then suddenly within 2 months we've got the funding not only to build it, equip it and run it for a year. It just came, in a sense, out of the blue. So I don't there's enough with the people that we are working with to have to be able to, just to plan for the future. One of the things I can say is that when I first went to Malawi 18 years ago, I've been 29 times. The average life expectancy was 37. You cannot believe it. 18 years later, the average life expectancy is 64. So I'm not saying it's about Starfish. I'm not saying we've done that, but I'm saying we've contributed towards the wonderful sense that life is important. And we've seen, we've been part of that great change through education, healthcare, and all of those other things.
That's fantastic. So one thing, I guess, to pull it together, you mentioned earlier about the connectivity story. So I'd be curious to explore that and what that means.
Okay, well, so the connectivity story was lovely because I was in Malawi last time I was there. I think it was last time, maybe the time before last. And I was at a petrol station filling up the car. And a young lady came to help me, a lady called Grace, and she filled up the car. And having filled it up, she said, "Would you like a receipt?" And I said, "Yes, please." And she said, "What name would you like the receipt in?" And I said, "Starfish Malawi." And she looked at me and I looked at her, and I knew she had a story. And she told me her story. She had been at the school where we originally rebuilt the school. She can't remember me. It wasn't really about me, but she remembers that somebody like me had turned up and the school had got rebuilt, and she benefited from better education. She got accepted for secondary school, but she couldn't afford to go to secondary school. But she became one of the very first Starfish Malawi sponsored students and had gone to secondary school, done very well at secondary school. Her sponsor had then agreed to help her through Teachers Training College. And she had just finished teaching Teachers Training College, and she was just doing a job between having finished at Teachers Training College and starting at a first school called Katatima, which was one of our linked schools. And she was going to go as a teacher to the school where we also link and support. So I kind of saw that journey from a little girl, aged sort of 6 or 7, through to a young woman in her early 20s, that journey through. And suddenly I didn't know who she was. I had no, anything, but I could see suddenly the way that our investment in this one young girl through those years has now produced a teacher who herself is now going to help others. And it's kind of seeing that connectivity of the work. And often most of the best things happen when you're not aware of them, rather than, you come and you boast about this or that. It's the little things that are going on underneath the radar, so to speak.
That's a beautiful story to pull it all together. And I've no doubt that our listeners and viewers out there will have quite a lot of questions about both the charity itself, but also the insurance and how they can get involved in it. So we'll make sure that absolutely everything, the links to what you're doing, both abroad and domestically, the insurance and everything else is included in the show notes. But Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us.
Yes. Would you like me just to say, I'm sorry, I know we're probably near the end, but just to tell you a little bit about car insurance for cyclists?
Yeah, definitely. So that would be a nice way, I guess, to pull it together so people can hopefully think about what they do next.
Yeah, that's right. Having had that moment, we've got to have a panel of underwriters who have said that they recognise that cycling does in fact improve driving. We now have statistics that prove that. So what we ask people to do is, if their renewal's not due, is to register their renewal, so that if it's due sort of next June, we will then get back in touch with you nearer the time, because that's one of the difficulties selling car insurance, is that your people might be interested, but their renewal's not due. The website is carinsuranceforcyclists.com. And this is one of our flyers we have, which shows a woman looking at the road through the eyes of a cyclist. And carinsuranceforcyclists.com. And as I say, details will be provided. And the average savings from existing renewal premiums, that's the one that you are invited at, rather than the one that you get through searching or the Go Compare and Money Supermarket. And we have to compete with those people, is 21%, which is a decent saving. Obviously, there are always exceptions to the rule, and it is a competitive market. But the thing is that when someone does go ahead or renew, then an element of that commission comes to me, and I then pass it on to support the work that I'm doing. And the logic behind it is, if you are healthy, if you are cycling, you are getting road experience. If you're cycling, you're not driving. Therefore, your exposure is down because you're not in your car perhaps as much as you would be if you didn't cycle and drive. And obviously, there's a whole lot of the eco benefits and all sorts of other things that are going on. So it's good to do, but at the same time, I can say to you, from my perspective, I don't take one penny myself, and therefore my driver is to get people to, when their insurance is due for renewal, give us a chance to quote. You'll go to all these other places. Why not try us out? And then we'll be delighted to give you a go. And as I say, we convert about 1 in 3, which it means 2 in 3 we don't. But in our industry, with the plethora of insurance offers, actually 1 in 3 is a good conversion rate. Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's really nice to share the story of something, I mentioned before we started recording, your organisation was based originally, your original company, out of where I grew up. So it's really nice to have kind of discovered this story and be sharing it with people. But yeah, it's been really enjoyable, and I look forward to hopefully connecting more and more people with you going forwards. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. And don't forget, we've got a back catalogue of content that goes all the way back to January 2020, including fighter pilots, Olympic champions, TV presenters, and inspiring authors. We'd really appreciate it if you can give us a quick rate and review, however you're joining us today. And if you don't want to miss out on any future episodes, make sure you hit subscribe. Our community update drops once a month, and we've got some great guest content being added, so be sure to sign up for that. And finally, we're all about inspiring and supporting as many people as possible. So if you can share this episode with one person that you think would enjoy it, that would be really, really cool. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Road Monkey Podcast.